Okay, so today we're going to be talking about finding the area between two curves. So the area between two curves, the formula that we're going to use for area here. So it is going to be the integral. So remember, we know integrals are used for area under the curve. From A to B, so this is where the area will start and stop, the x values, of f of x minus g of x dx. And this is provided that f of x is going to be greater than g of x. For a is less than x is less than b. Okay, so this could actually be in terms of x's, or it could be in terms of y's. So you'll eventually see another formula where you'll have y's, but it's essentially going to be the same thing. So some ways to think about this is in the inside it's going to be upper minus lower, so the upper graph minus the lower graph, or if we're going to be going from left to right, and we'll see some of those, we're going to be going from right minus left. And those are talking about this f of x minus g of x here. Alright, so the area, we already know area under the curve is the integral, so it's going to be the area from A to B of the upper minus the lower, or the right minus the left, and then this will be in terms of x or y depending on. If you're doing upper minus lower, this would be in terms of x. If we're doing right minus left, this would be in terms of y. Okay. So for the first one, and you are going to need a calculator for this, we want to find the area of the shaded region R. So that region R that's shaded there, that is bounded by y equals sine of pi x and y equals x cubed minus 4x. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to actually just graph these. You may know which graph is which, but just to confirm here. So I'm going to go to my y equals. First off, make sure you're in radians. So you can check, see how at the top it says radians. So we're going to have sine of pi x, and then in y2 I'm going to put x cubed minus 4x. Okay, so we're going to graph these. And see how this has a lot of graphs on here. So if we make it look more like our graph here, if we change our window, they go for their x values just from 0 to 2. And then for their y values on the graph, they have from negative 3 to 1. Just so it'll look like the graph that we already have. So there you go. And if you don't know which one was which, the blue here is the sine x, and then the red is the other one. So this right here, this is our y equals sine of pi x. And then the bottom one, let's put some pink. And then the bottom one here is our x cubed minus 4x. And it is important to know which one is which because we're going to need to use those. Okay, so we want to find the area of the shaded region in between these two lines. So we're going to make an integral. So our integral to find the area here is, it says it goes from A to B. So those are the x values of where it starts and stops. So you can see here that they intersect at 0. That's where those areas starts. And then the area stops being intersected at 2. So my x values that I'm going to use from here are 0 to 2, and make sure they're in the correct order. So the formula says f of x minus g of x, and remember that means it has to be upper minus lower. So the upper equation here is going to be this y equals sine of pi x, and my lower equation here is going to be my x cubed minus 4x. So you got to make sure you do the top one minus the bottom one. So we're going to have sine pi x, and then minus the bottom equation x cubed minus 4x, and then we always have dx. Okay, so sine of pi x was on top, minus, because it says minus, and then your bottom function x cubed minus 4x. So we are going to use the calculator for this, so remember to find integrals. We're going to use Math 9. So I'm going to remind you how to use this. So if we go to Math and down to number 9, the integral is going to be from 0 to 2. Just be careful when you type this in. So I already have a parenthesis, so that's fine. I'm going to do sine of pi x, close the parentheses, and then minus, because I have subtraction and I have all this stuff behind it, we want to make sure we put parentheses for the second part. So minus x cubed minus 4x. And I'm going to close that parentheses, and then I already have parentheses. And then we always have to put dx for the last part. So just make sure it looks exactly like it does on your paper, and you're going to end up with exactly 4. So this answer is going to give us 4. Now this does not have units on it, but it is area, so whatever the units would be, if there were units, they would be units squared. So that is how you find the area under the curve, but essentially it's between two curves here. So you always make sure you do top minus the bottom area there. Alright, so we're going to move on to example 2. So it says pictured here to the right is the graph of f of x is x cubed minus over 4 minus x squared over 3 minus x over 2 plus 3 cosine x. And then a line L, which is tangent to f of x at the point 0, 3. So we want to find the area of region R first. Okay, so region R is here. Okay, so region R only has, so if we look at this here, it has this curve around it, and then the other curve that's really around it would just be the x-axis here. So essentially we're still under two curves if you want to set it up that way, and I'll show you why you don't really have to do that. But so if we want to do the area there, okay, we have to know where this starts and where it stops. So you can tell that it stops at 0, so I'm going to put 0 on top. But right now I don't know where that intersects, so I'm going to need to use my calculator to figure that out first. So let's get our calculator. And we're going to graph this equation. So we have, I'm going to make it look like theirs, so I'm going to make fractions. So we have x cubed over 4 and then minus x squared over 3 and then minus x over 2, and then we have plus 3 cosine x, and we definitely make sure we're still in radians. Okay, so, and I'm going to put 0 in y2 because we are going to need to figure out where that's going to intersect. So I'm going to change my, if you graph it right now, we saw the same windows from last time. So they have their x values going from -2 to 4. And then they have their y values going from -2 to 4 as well. This way it looks similar to the graph we have. Okay, so this is just the curve. This is not the tangent line because we don't know the equation. So I need to figure out right here where this intersects. So I'm going to do second trace intersect. I'm going to move it close to this point over here. And I'm going to hit enter 3 times. So this x value, where these start intersecting here, it says is that x equals -1.373. Okay, so we will use this graph more in a minute, but for right now, that's all I needed to know. It starts at this -1.373 and it goes to 0. So down here we're going to have -1.373. Okay, so remember when you're doing area, it's always top minus bottom. Well, this on top is the curve, so we're going to have the curve here. So we're going to write our equation for our curve. And then it's always subtract what's on the bottom. Well, technically what's on the bottom is just the x-axis here, and that equation for the x-axis would just be 0. So we could just put 0 here. But here's the thing. This is really just one curve, okay? This is really just the area underneath the curve. We're not really using two curves because we're using the x-axis. So you don't have to technically put that 0 there. But if you do to represent it, that will work. And just so the x-axis does represent y equals 0, so that's why we put that in there. Okay, so we're going to use Math 9 to figure this out. Alright, so if we go to Math 9, just kind of a lot to type in here, but we just have to make sure we're careful. So it actually starts at negative 1.373 and it goes to 0. So here I'm going to put a parentheses, and then I'm going to make my fractions look exactly like theirs. This just confirms so you don't have to worry about parentheses or type anything in wrong. And then minus x squared, but we need another fraction. And over 3, and then minus x over 2, and then plus 3. And then I'm going to close the parentheses, so let's just confirm that that is correct. And then I'm going to just go ahead and put the minus 0 here. If you don't put the minus 0, it's fine. But so that's equal to, or we got to make sure we put dx. So we're going to end up with, I didn't write this correctly, so that's going to make a difference here. Sorry, so this would be 3 cosine x here. This is why I miss having y'all in class, because then you can't tell me that I did something wrong. Okay, so guys, if you do this, you can go to second entry, and we can just type this in so we don't have to type the whole thing. So I'm going to do cosine x, and then minus 0. So now we get the correct answer here. So this should be 2.903 for our area here. And we don't have units, but it would be some type of units squared here. So let me go back and fix this. Okay, so yeah, make sure you type it correctly, and that will give you that. So that gives us our area there, 2.903 units squared. That would be the area of R.